another edition of Braves and Culture as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the 1995 Atlanta Braves World Series win. So today we are joined by Kenny Burns, the lifestyle specialist. Also, Andy Hyman, who is the founder of Distant Replays, and Big Gipp, founder.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday from
Happy
the
birthday,
Goodie Goodie Mob. Fellas, how y'all doing tonight?
Fantastic.
How you doing?
We're great. How are you, Rashan?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited about this particular episode, and so we can talk about the emergence of the Braves and hip hop culture and fashion. And I don't know if we could have gotten a better group of men to talk about that type of emergence. And Big Gipp, let's start off with you, of course, with the Dungeon family, Goodie Mob, Outkast. Outkast, when they first came out, they were the first ones to wear the A jerseys, kind of put the South up on the map and put the Braves and kind of melt those two things together. Talk a little bit about that, and were you all strategic in making sure Atlanta was represented, especially during that 95, the summer of 95 and leading into the World Series?
I think that we were more concerned about the music, but I think when we started shooting players ball, I think that's the first time that I really recognized that Rico really understood what it meant for Dre to wear that Braves jersey. Rico is the one that said, yo, go get that Braves jersey and put that on Dre. And from that instance, I think it totally connected us to the Atlanta Braves. It totally connected us to what was going on in Atlanta, and the fashion for us to stand beside the Braves at that time, it was just phenomenal.
Right. And then Big Gipp, you've never been afraid to just express yourself fashion-wise. Tell us a little bit about, was that a strategy, or that was something that you said, you know what, this is who I am, take it or leave it?
Well, it was a little bit of both, because one thing about it was I was a big wrestling fan as a child. And my grandmother used to take us to Channel 17 downtown, and I used to see the likes of Ric Flair and all them coming into the ring with those beautiful robes on. And from there, it was a lady in my neighborhood. Her name was Jean Carn, one of the biggest singers from the 70s, went to Washington High School. And when I started going over to her house, the first time that I recognized was her closet, was her clothes, was the way that an artist lives, and then the way that an artist dressed. She taught me all that. So that's where I really got it from. Being a fan of wrestling and being with Miss Carn and being at these underground concerts like Out of Sensations with Miss Carn and Peebo Bryson, and being able to be up under those kind of people and see what it took to be a star. And I knew it was about your flash. That's what Pimp C used to call it. He's like, Gipp, I got to get my flash right.
Yes. Rest in peace, Pimp C. Let's talk a little bit to Mr. Kenny Burns. D.L. Warfield just joined the call too, because he has been the mastermind behind so many creative projects, and we'll talk to him in just a second. Kenny, let's the lifestyle specialist. I mean, you specialized in fashion, you specialized in so much from film and television, but you've always had such an innate pulse to what's going on in fashion and culture. Take us back to when you realized that you've been here since 92, that Atlanta was kind of really catapulting themselves into the fashion world, especially when it comes to the A that we all know is synonymous to the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I remember Shanti Dawes actually calling me about this new group that she had. I used to do a party called the Funk Clinic. And the Funk Clinic was the best Friday night party in Atlanta, you know what I'm talking about? And we was the first school group of guys to really connect with the city. We ain't got to go all the way back into that, but we literally got the phone call from Shoestring. She was like, I got this group called Outkast, want to bring them all to the thing. I was like, the dude that had the Atlanta Braves, because Hank Aaron, the visual of that was very familiar to us, you know what I'm saying? But you remember Hank Aaron hitting that home run You know what I'm talking about? And then I was connecting dots because the video was so crazy. But yeah, it was synonymous with how Atlanta was now having a voice. And I want to give props to Outkast and Goodie Mob because they made it Southern and not country. You know, Gipp was talking about this the other day. He was like, oh, I'm sorry, what did y'all have the other night, Gipp? Y'all had the behind the music, right?
Unsung.
Unsung. So when I watched the Unsung, they used to say like that would be offensive to somebody from the South to say you country. It's Southern, but I think that Southern hospitality was now front and center because of the music. You had rappers that could rap with anybody in the world. You had presence everywhere in the world when Outkast and Goodie Mob hit. And I feel like that gave the backdrop, which was the sports teams, which was the city itself, a sense of pride. And even when he was just saying about, you know, Rico was like, yo, put on that Atlanta Braves shirt. I mean, we from Atlanta, you know, so that was because of the music. That was the driving force. And that's what connected the dots with all of us who moved here that made this our home.
Right, right. Speaking of connecting the dots, Andy, you truly connected the dots. I mean, I have to say that this jersey right here I purchased.
Yeah.
And
well,
I need that, Andy.
Right.
Yeah, what that is, that's what I first learned what a hookup was, right? When you match, and Andre Benjamin, he made that 74 A hat famous. And that's, I mean, he must have bought 50 of them from me. I don't know what he did with them all, but he bought those. But you had to match the fitted A cap with any one of the 6 different Braves jerseys that they had. And Andre also said, you got to get that blue pullover from the 80s. You got to get that jersey. So those guys, forget about it. Once they started wearing them, and then Jermaine Dupri and Ludacris, Rico Wade, Jagged Edge, every local Atlanta group came through. I didn't know who half these guys were. I just came from New York. You know, I've been in the city 3 years. I was into the sports history. I didn't think about the fashion of it. But man, once they started coming in, I learned quick.
Right, right. Did you know that it would like grow like it did? I literally have bought my husband in like 12 of these shirts.
No, my market was the sports nerd, the sports historian, because I had throwback everything, and that's what interested me. I had no idea that, I mean, I'm going to say I got very lucky. Now, I won't say, like Big Boy and Fife and a lot of these guys are huge sports fans too, man. They know their history. So they mix that together with the knowledge that they knew about sports and then about fashion. And, you know, it grew my business.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
It was a good time. Goodie Mob was there plenty of times too.
Yeah. Now, DL,
everybody.
Absolutely. DL has been just like, you have been so much to the culture. From creating amazing artwork and albums and just really just being always at the forefront of the pulse of what Atlanta is. When creating artwork like you did, how much of the pulse of Atlanta went into what you created? And take us back, because you were there in those that 95 summer leading into the World Series, and how much that played a role into what you created.
When I first moved down to Atlanta from New York, like one of the things that I learned quickly was just the pride that everybody had in the city of Atlanta. And it was one of the things that I really loved about it first. And the opportunity to work with artists that were really driving like the soundtrack of what the world was starting to really take notice of was definitely it was an additional feather into the cap of everything that I was doing. And so, you know, I didn't have to explain, you know, what Atlanta was to any of the artists that I worked with. They told me, you know, and they put me up on things that, you know, they were doing and what they were into. And so, you know, for instance, like going back to the Goodie Mob, I think like the first Dungeon Family project that I worked on was Goodie Mob Soul Food Project. And I came in like the album was already done and the album cover was already done. So I just did the singles to follow that. And, you know, those guys heavily dictated the texture of everything that was created, from the usage of the hot food logo. I mean, the hot sauce logo that we ended up getting sued for, but it was hot. you know, but my face got a little lost.
Rebels.
And but you know, like that was like when you really dial into the culture, you know. So I was like, "What are y'all into?" And they was always talking about it. You know, I think even one of those guys used to walk around with some of that shit in their pocket. But you know, like the fact that they were big on it and they were open to ideas, and then they were also very good historians on the city of Atlanta. It made my job really, really easy.
Yeah. So Gipp, what type of impact do you think that the Dungeon family had representing and them, you know, seeing this A and being synonymous with what you all represented? What type of impact do you think it had, not just on the South, but actually across the country and worldwide?
Well, I knew we didn't know after we dropped Players Ball, you know, then we came back with the second single for Outkast. That's when we did the second single, and I mean we started the video at the Dungeon, and we ended off at Deion Sanders Club downtown on the first day of the Freaknik, '95.
Wow.
And we went inside the film, and once we came back outside, that's when the city was flooded. 250,000 people was in our city.
Yeah.
And to watch the police and nobody, the people, they couldn't do nothing. It was just that many people, and everybody to me was playing Outkast. They were playing Outkast music. And that's when we really realized, like, man, we really did something bigger than just Atlanta.
Right.
That's the first time we really realized it.
Yeah. Kenny, what do you remember about that time and the feeling of Atlanta when you actually were able to see and take a back seat or maybe a front row seat to how fashion and sports were kind of coming together to really, really set the precedent of what Atlanta has become now?
Yeah, first and foremost, the Atlanta Braves had to win that year because Freaknik was about to be over.
Yeah.
In the event that tragedy would happen, we had to have a championship. But no, really, I think that, you know, it's a pride thing. It's a representation of your city thing. And I think because Atlanta was so good, I mean, you got to think about the Atlanta University Center and how many historically Black colleges are in that cluster. You got to think about Georgia Tech. You got to think about all the people that moved here to go to school, end up staying here and starting their lives and became, lifelong Atlanta Braves fans, Hawks fans, and Falcons fans. So, you know, I look at it like it was the awakening. You know, not only was this scene budding, you know, on the music scene, but it was like, you know, I mean, you had Hank Aaron. I mean, Atlanta had Hank Aaron. Like, if you know anything about your culture, you know what that man means to
legendary
our culture and baseball. So I just look at it like, you know, it was an awakening of sorts. And because, you know, this being a predominantly Black city, to have that kind of, you know, control on the music business, because I don't think anyone ever really acknowledges this, and I got in trouble with the New York Massive because I said it, but I don't know anyone who's had control of music as long as Atlanta has had control.
Right.
And you have to look at the contribution right before Outkast too, because even though, you know, we were the booty shake city and, you know, we played a lot of Miami music, when Outkast came and Goodie came, the social consciousness of what was going on was now amplified. The social consciousness of, you know, what Atlanta really was and went through. And then so you had all these transplants. You had the people from Atlanta, but then you had all these transplants here. And I saw that. I used to go to Busy Bee every day. I used to go off, you know, old Nat, go roast. I used to go to Cascade, and you'd be really like in tune and receptive to the words. And I just think, again, back to how it ties into baseball, it's the pride.
Yeah.
It's the pride. And it's the pride, you know, of your city and your teams.
Right.
I'd say, for me, I felt like I had a barbershop going, and coming from up north, I didn't know a whole lot about rap music. I just know the East Coast, West Coast. But you could see with every new album that came out, with every new song, the support all the guys gave each other, all the groups gave each other. And then everyone just started talking about the Southern rap. What is this Southern rap stuff? Who are these guys? And man, it just exploded. It was just an exciting, real exciting 4, 5, 6 years to be around. The parties and all the bars that were put on. Biddy, I don't even remember a guy named Biddy, put on all these great parties. It was just insanity.
Mark Barnes. Mark Biddy Barnes.
That's right.
Mark Barnes. That was very kind of you. He doesn't get much credit. He doesn't get as much credit as Alex Gidwan gets, or I
That's
get.
right. The other guy.
He was a really
Alex,
big promoter. Yeah, he was a really big promoter back then.
Let's get back. Go ahead, DL. Go ahead.
No, like the first time I heard players ball, you know, I told Lisa, I was like, we gotta move to Atlanta. You know, and so like I remember driving in my car. I was living in St. Louis at the time. And I remember like driving in my car, and when I heard it come on the radio, and then when the DJ started talking about like this is the first rap group from, you know, L.A. Reid and Babyface, I was like, yeah, this is definitely something I got to be a part of. And what was cool about that song is it really, really captured the vibe of the whole city, especially for somebody that was a visitor. But when I seen the video and when I heard the music and how saucy and tasteful, I mean, not tasteful, but spicy, like the sound was that they created, it was something that I knew that I had to be a part of.
Right, right. And we talk about, you know, bringing the theme back to the 25th anniversary of the 1995 World Series. When Outkast and Goodie would wear their A hats, people didn't say Atlanta, they referred to it as the A, like setting the precedent of what Atlanta, and that's not just a city, that's culture, that's swag. There's so much that encompasses that. Speak to that a little bit and how that kind of transformed from Atlanta to the A.
I think once we started going and doing different shows in different cities, and we started seeing people wearing the A hat, it was like, wow, like, and the connection that it made instantly to Atlanta. You know what I mean? Like, it was an exciting time because it was like every day you woke up, you didn't know what was gonna happen, but the energy of the city was just so high at the time. And the second part of it was, you know, we dropped the second video, the Braves won, and then, you know, we now we here. And then Reek them say, yo, we about to move out of Lakewood, we getting a new house. We moved back to Adams Drive off Cascade, and right across the street, Hank Aaron.
Wow. Wow. What was that?
God.
Right. What like symbolically, how did that feel for you?
Symbolically, it felt like we had truly did something that even our heroes was excited about, because I remember us moving to the house and us throwing the first party there. And I remember all of us riding motorcycles up and down the street. And this man just walked down to the end of the driveway and he started looking around. And when he stopped, everybody stopped. And he said, how y'all doing? I'm y'all neighbor, Hank Aaron.
Wow.
And we all fell out. Like, he said, so, I mean, that's when we really started feeling like, yo, we did something. Now we got to stand on it, because now our heroes see us and they're paying attention.
Right.
So that was the biggest thing about just that second record, moving out of Lakewood, feeling the success. And then when we all, you know, when we finally get some money to spend and get a little motorcycles, and then we find out that he stayed across the street, the hero, the Hank Aaron. It was a beautiful thing.
My goodness.
So I want to say this though too about the hat. The hat became a crown. You know, I never forget when you heard people saying they're coming to Atlanta. They would never say they coming to Atlanta. They coming to the A. I'm going to the A.
Right. I'm
going down to the A. But people who were transplants here, who clearly had home teams and things, that they started rocking that hat because it seemed like it opened up the floodgates for the city. You know what I'm saying? And now when you look at Atlanta and what it's become, it's a metropolis. Like, it's, you know what I'm saying? We got the biggest, most trafficked airport in the world. Like, you know what I'm saying? The culture. I mean, again, I really want y'all to hear that. Who moves culture like Atlanta? Nobody.
Right.
Nope.
Right. And Andy, I'm sure you were able to see that firsthand. You got guys that weren't from here saying, "Hey, give me your latest whatever you have throwback for Atlanta." How did that feel, knowing that these were transplants coming to the city? You resonated with
I'm one of them, but it felt great, you know. I mean, you know, we are in Atlanta, so a lot of tourists want to get Atlanta stuff, but it meant a lot more than just that. And, you know, the way they celebrate Hank Aaron every year on the day that he broke, you know, around the league, it's just become that national symbol. And like I said, Andre, that was a hat he bought. I mean, I could have retired on the amount of hats 74 hats he sold. And I mean, it's as the A. This wasn't a real jersey that they wore in the field, but it's the A, and you know, it became a fashion piece. But so yeah, I mean, easily, far and away, was a best-selling cap, and you know, I don't know what much more to say about it. You know?
Right. DL, you said you got here. You said 90. You got here that summer.
I got here in 95.
95. What did it feel like when you told your wife, when you all left where you were, and you told your wife, I have to be in Atlanta? What was it that you felt when you landed, that you saw the sports and entertainment world come together, and knowing that the Atlanta Braves was kind of at the impetus of that?
Well, before I came here, like, I actually made like a 1-year pit stop in New York. So I went from St. Louis to New York to Atlanta. But before I ever went to New York, I was in Atlanta for a little bit, you know, on some sports stuff, and just the way that the city moved. And I just felt, as an African-American male, like there was opportunities here for me. And another thing that I love about Atlanta is, like, it's a place that I came to that I never felt like I was a stranger. You know, like New York City, feel like a stranger. LA, you kind of feel like a stranger. But Atlanta is just different in that way. You know, and I guess it kind of goes back to what Kenny said earlier, just the whole concept of Southern hospitality. And
Southern playlistic, got a live funky music. I'm sorry.
And so even like, you know, like my first days at LaFace and meeting the artists, like when I first met Outkast guys, and I remember like when I first met Goodie Mob in the elevator, you know, but like they made you feel like it was, you know, almost family. You know what I mean? I mean, it was a warm-up period, but they never made you feel like a stranger. So, you know, just the little bit of taste of Atlanta that I got in like 93 is what drove me to move here in 95.
Absolutely. Big Gipp, you know, the summer of 95, the Source Awards took place. And I mean, the iconic quote, the South got something to say. We win the World Series. And now the profile here in our city was, I mean, it had reached the highest of the highest. Then we go into the Olympics the following year. What was that feeling like, knowing that something was moving for our city like it was, Gipp?
I think it felt totally different because, you know, me being here from the beginning and seeing the city, you know, at one time we only had one tall building downtown, that was the Winston, you know, so watching the city grow from a small town to now we had the Olympics, you just started seeing people commingling. Like you started seeing Detroit, Chicago, DC, New York, even the Miami, all of us in one melting pot, but all of us trying to strive to be something else. And it just seemed like everybody was taking wherever they was from and they was throwing it in the pot because they knew that this was like a blank surface for everybody. And I think it really, really helped the city propel, grow, and all those different cities that these people was coming from, because everybody that came and jumped into this city, like I think it really paid them back. It gave them everything to live on, and it gave them a base. And I think it was just the energy, like DL said, it was the energy of Atlanta finally being seen, Atlanta being on the big stage. You know what I mean? Like from the baseball players to the football players, Deion Sanders, Lisa, Rising, all the big stories that was going on there, and it was all connected to LaFace Records. Like LaFace Records, the Braves, Outkast. It was just so energizing to see that for the first time, Atlanta was really getting the respect, or we were selling the records on a national level. Because after leaving the Source Awards, you know, being in that crowd, being it, us four, Shanti Dawson, and 2 Outkast, and being in that crowd, I tell people all the time, it was like sitting on a federal prison yard, because it was like the energy was so thick, hip hop was so new, and this was really the first time that all of us had really seen each other in the flesh. That people don't really understand that this was the first time I seen Snoop, I seen Dre, I seen the Wu-Tang. So to be acknowledged in that crowd, but then to get up on that stage and get booed, I said, now y'all done now. Because you put that battery in our back where it made us like, it made us come back home like for the next 5-6 years from, a criminal still standing. We just kept going. We kept going. We kept going. We was like feeling like, as long as we had the people around us, we had great people around us. We had Shanti, we had Blue Williams, we had Bernard Park, the vet. You know what I mean? We had a lot of good people around us during them times, man. So the confidence to beat who felt like they was the best, we thought we had it.
Yeah.
Look, so I want to say something though, because I was there at the Source Awards that night, and I was responsible for 2 bad kids named Illegal. They were signed to Rowdy Records.
Wow.
And Dallas Austin and Claude Austin and Dave Gates sent me up there with Illegal. Now, mind you, I want to speak to what Gipp just said, because this is me sitting on the side while the Death Row and Bad Boy thing was going on. So the reason that the air was so thick in there is because in between is when we got the award. You know what I'm saying? So when y'all went up there, it was backstage tension. It was tension in the audience, and Death Row was 400 deep in New York City. So you just thought the building was going to explode. But what I loved, Gipp, what I will cherish to this day is that when I left that theater, because of what y'all got up there and say, I felt like I was now from Atlanta. It was no longer I had moved to Atlanta and I became friends with all of y'all and family with some of y'all. It was like I was from Atlanta. I felt like the bully finally got punched in the eye. I felt like the bully had got punched in the eye. And that's how I feel about the 95 World Series. I just feel like it wasn't a whole lot of energy around the team, and it wasn't like the banners weren't being waved. But when y'all went on that stage and y'all said what y'all had to say, it's been dominance ever since.
Yes.
And for the Braves, like if you think about historically the Braves team since the mid-90s, they've been a contender every year. So I my hat's off. I'm from Atlanta, goddamn.
I love it. I love it.
So,
go ahead.
One of the things that I noticed actually real quick was, like, going back to what Gipp said, like, they definitely had, like, Outkast, Goodie Mob, the Dungeon Family, they definitely had a chip on their shoulder versus anybody from, like, any rap group from New York or LA, like those movements. And I love that because I'm a competitor. And it actually spewed into, like, all of the employees. I mean, you could ask Shanti, Rashan, you were there, but, like, people at LaFace took pride in dominating all of the record labels from New York. And we wanted to dominate all of the record labels from LA. And I think that, we could probably say that when Outkast and Goodie Mob, like when they thought they threw that flag down in the ground saying the South got something to say, that was the jump off. And we've been kicking ass ever since.
Yeah, we have, especially with our Atlanta Braves as we embark upon this 25th anniversary for the World Series, 1995. Andy, I know you from upstate, but you straight from Atlanta now.
That's true.
Speak to us about the summer of 95 and that feeling and what you remember into the World
Series. For
me,
me, I'd only been in Atlanta 4 years. I got here in 91, so I hadn't started my business yet, but I was in the bar business at the time. And, I worked in Buckhead at Pat Hurley's and CJ's. I don't know if you ventured to those places, but they were packed for the Braves games every weekend. So it was electric. You had all the kids, all the students coming in there, packing it for all the games. And we're there for the Bream slide a few years earlier. So it was just kind of pent up, and we finally got that win, and the place went nuts.
Yeah,
the place went absolutely crazy. So, and there are a lot of Braves jerseys now. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but they were all just regular Braves jerseys. So it wasn't until Big Boy later and Andre when they started rocking the throwback Braves jersey that it went nuts. But
and so the one behind you is autographed, right? The one behind you is autographed.
Yeah, that's one that he wore at the MTV Celebrity Softball game. And he gave
Yeah.
it to me. I think he had a couple extra, but I still cherish it, man, for sure.
Absolutely.
You don't even know, man. Like it was the first time Big Boy got in the car and he took us to your shop. And I mean, that was the first time I saw him spend thousands.
It was crazy, man.
I was like,
I don't know how to handle it at first.
Jesus, what is?
Yeah.
What? I was like, Lord, how much they cost? Lord.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
we loved them. We
yeah.
loved them.
You guys
and it made them special every night. Big Boy Rock went every night on tour. Like, and then that's when I started seeing everybody rocking them, and they was like, "Yo, we started this." I'm like, "No." If you kind of go back, we were kind of the first to put them throwbacks on, man.
He was the first. Period.
Yeah.
He was the first.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kenny. You wanted to add something, Kenny?
No, I want to say that Atlanta started the throwback craze. I mean, after that, every team that could make a jersey, a replica jersey, historic offering from their respective cities did. And and if you go back to videos and you go back to what we were doing in the clubs, I mean, we might want to take that credit too, along with music and everything else.
No, you don't even say might. You should. Now, I got to give credit Mitchell and Ness. They're the store in Philly that made the jerseys.
Yeah, no.
Them and Ebbets.
There,
Ebbets Field in Washington. And that's another thing. They made all the official authentic Negro League jerseys, which Usher started wearing, the Atlanta Black Crackers jersey. So that brought that into the forefront. And, this year was the 100-year anniversary of the Negro Leagues this year. So that's come a long way of not being known. And that is partially because of all the guys that supported it in Atlanta.
That's perfect. See, this is information that we need. This is good stuff. Good stuff. Before we wrap everything up, I just have one last question. What message do you think music, entertainment, sports leading into this World Series, what message did it send to the rest of the world, really?
In the infamous words of Andre Benjamin, the South got something to say.
Yeah.
How about it?
I third that.
You
Hootie
third
hoo.
Yeah.
Hootie hoo.
Hootie hoo! Yes. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I want to encourage everybody to tune into World Series week on Fox Sports South every day at 7 p.m. That's the first pitch. So they're replaying the entire 1995 World Series when our Braves took home the ring. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. Kenny Burns, the lifestyle specialist, my man, D.L. Warfield, creative director, artist extraordinaire, Big Gipp from the one and only Goodie Mob, and Andy Hyman from Distant Replays. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Stay well.